Arrest this week of the head of the Police Crime Intelligence Unit, Dumisani Khumalo, and 6 other senior officials in the SAPS, leading to more questions about what is going on in our police service. The 7 have been charged with making unlawful appointments, but it follows such a long period when our police crime intelligence units have had serious issues. Chad Thomas is the head of IRS Forensic Investigators. Chad, good afternoon to you. To see so many very senior police officers being arrested in this one action in police crime intelligence, what does this tell us about what is going on in the division?
Stephen, hi. Good afternoon to the viewers. Look, crime intelligence has been plagued with issues for many, many years now. In fact, the Provincial Commissioner of KwaZulu-Natal, when he was the acting commissioner from a national perspective, Nkwazi, back in 2012, suspended Richard Mdluli, who was then head of crime intelligence. We saw Joey Mabaso, who was one of the generals in crime intelligence, closely linked to Radovan Krejcir. In fact, their wives were in business together. So issues around crime intelligence have been ongoing for a very long time. For me, it seems as if there's a clean out taking place. It seems to me that this may be the beginning of something very positive. One must remember, it's not the first time we've seen such a massive operation involving people being targeted for allegedly being involved in bad activities. Back in 1992, F.W. de Klerk in August of that year suspended and then removed from duty 19 police generals. And later in December of that year, he removed 23 military generals. And that was to ensure that there would be a transition and that there wouldn't be any blocks towards a democratic dispensation. And I'm thinking to myself, this is something very similar that could be happening. This could be with the president's knowledge. It could be with Minister Senzo Mchunu knowledge that they want to clean up this department, which is so vital to fight crime in South Africa.
I mean, it's such an interesting point that you make, and it goes back to another question which is quite complicated, which is who is doing the cleaning out? Now, as I understand our system, the police minister, Senzo Mchunu, he would have to know, but he can't make the arrests or even order the arrests. He's a minister. He has oversight, but no direct control of the SAPS. So that would then make me think that it is Fani Masemola or the NPA. Now, in this case, the NPA, and they were part of this. But presumably this won't succeed unless Fani Masemola, the National Police Commissioner, is part of it.
Well, I think that's why the investigation is being undertaken by IDAC. IDAC, as we all know, the Investigating Directorate Against Corruption has been established. And a lot of people think it's Scorpions 2.0. I don't think we can go quite that far, but they're a very well-established unit with experts within their ranks. It's a very small unit, but it seems like they're beginning to punch above their weight, which is a good indicator. When one looks at the arrest of Jackie Celebi all those years ago, it was done by the Scorpions. It wasn't done by the police. When one looks at this particular arrest of these members with IDAC being involved and not necessarily IPIT, not necessarily the Inspector General of Intelligence, not necessarily the Police Anti-Corruption Unit or the Hawks Anti-Corruption Unit, it suggests that perhaps they wanted this to remain as independent and as far from the police as possible to ensure that it would be as objective as possible and that processes could be followed.
I mean, one of the things I just don't get is that, I mean, as you point to Richard Mdluli, we can go back far beyond that. But for years, the Police Crime Intelligence Unit has not worked properly. And I mean, when you talk about trying to reduce the unbelievable rate of violent crime we have now, yes, you have to get the illegal guns, but police crime intelligence is a major part of that. That's one of the reasons we have so many syndicates, so much illegal mining, for example. Many democratic states have ways, they've found ways to manage police crime intelligence units. They need to be funded, they deal with secretive things. Why are we failing this? Is it politics?
It's a strange dynamic we have in South Africa. Is it control of the Secret Services Fund? Is it political interference? Has there been criminal syndicates that have somehow infiltrated? There's a whole lot of aspects that need to be looked at. When one looks at investigation in South Africa of crime, there has to be an intelligence component, whether it's proactive, where you infiltrate syndicates to disrupt and dismantle them, or whether it's reactive, like we saw this mass shooting in the Western Cape, where you've got informers on the ground who will then feed back information to their handlers. But what we know is money hasn't been spent properly at crime intelligence. We know that for the most part of this year, informers haven't been paid their allowances or their stipends. This means that there's no intelligence being fed. You must remember those informers are mercenary. They're there to make money. They're not there for anything else. And they're critical in the fight against crime because they're able to give an indication of what's happening on the ground. So all of this relates to not just unlawful appointments or allegedly unlawful appointments, but also the allegations revolving the irregular use of funds that should be used in the fight against crime that have been used to buy safe houses, used to buy hotels at what we believe to be heavily inflated prices. And all of this is highly questionable when we should be together fighting crime.
I mean, it's money, right? I mean, money is flowing in about 16 different directions. If you look at some of the history, I mean, the hotel example you give was just extraordinary. So we have this, what looks like a clean out. Presumably there could be more to come because we know from bitter experience that if you have a head of a police crime intelligence unit who's not doing the right thing, they can set a tone, almost a culture for an organization. This happens around the world. There might be a lot more investigations that need to happen.
Definitely. We saw with Mdluli how the leadership was hollowed out and replaced by people that were close to him. We saw how family members were appointed. We even saw how gangsters in KZN were appointed to senior posts within the undercover program. It's quite unbelievable. But then you see that there's some successes that come out of crime intelligence. When one looks at the anti-kidnapping task team, which is run out of head office, it works. It's using the private sector. And if their successes can be replicated, then we can start seeing a movement in respect of dismantling and disrupting these criminal syndicates. But it's such a small composition in the greater scheme of things, and there needs to be an overhaul. We need to see the IGI doing their job. The Inspector General of Intelligence needs to step up and needs to ensure that there's correct oversight in such a critical unit. Otherwise, we are going to not win this war on crime, which our minister seems very keen to do, as well as our president.
So, I mean, that you point to such an interesting set of things there, that there is so much that needs to happen. You spoke about the Inspector General of Intelligence. I'd have to agree. IPID too. I mean, there's an astonishing story a couple of years ago of how many people in the police service, just I think in KZN, had been accused of murder. And, I mean, nothing happened. And IPID will do an investigation, often give it back to the police. The police do nothing. What that means then is that the community doesn't trust the police, and on we go. I mean, IPID, I know, lots of political problems, but surely they should be more effective too.
You mentioned money earlier, and in some instances, some units get a lot of money and that money is not spent correctly. And in other instances, units don't get money and they're not able to be effective. Look at the Hawks. The Hawks are sitting at 51% capacity. They've never been over 60% in all the time that they've been in existence. How are they expected to actually do their jobs if they don't have sufficient members, resources, and capacity? You could literally double their success if you gave them the income, the revenue that they needed, the budget that they needed. Then, of course, you have crime intelligence where money gets squandered. Then you have IPID that don't have enough members. IPID are sitting on a backlog of 5 years. They're sitting on a backlog of about 15,000 cases. They just don't have enough members. When IDAC was first created as the ID, they only had 100 million rand in budget. It was then increased to 350 million rand per annum as IDAC. And the state needs to look at a return on investment. If they invest properly in these specialized units, they're going to bring money back into the fiscus. But more importantly, they're going to bring about stability and reassurance, which will create investor confidence. And it means it will have funds to go towards society-driven initiatives. Because South Africa right now needs that stability, and crime is, to me, the number one problem we have that leads to all these other problems, such as unemployment, resulting in people becoming criminals.
Chad Thomas, thank you, head of IRS Forensic Investigators. I really do appreciate the time today.